all the Bible. Um, we find it here in our text tonight. So Daniel chapter 6, let's just go ahead and read through this chapter here. It says, "It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom. And over these 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and that the king should have no damage. This Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. And then the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find none occasion nor fault, for as much as he was faithful. Neither was there any error or fault found in him. And then said these men, We shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. Then these presidents and princes assembled together to the king and said unto him, King Darius, live forever. All the presidents of the kingdom, the governors, the princes, the counselors, the captains, they have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing, that it be not changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not. Wherefore King Darius signed the writing and the decree. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being opened in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day, and he prayed, and he gave thanks before God as he did aforetime. And these men assembled, and they found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. And then they came near, and they spake before the king concerning the king's decree. Hast thou not signed a decree, that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, save of thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? And the king answered, and he said, The thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not. And then answered they, and they said before the king, That Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regardeth not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but maketh his petition 3 times a day. And then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased with himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. And these men assembled unto the king, and they said unto the king, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and the Persians is, that no decree nor statute which the king establisheth may be changed. And then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spake, and he said unto Daniel, Thy God whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. And a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel, and the king spake, that they have not hurt me. Forasmuch as before him innocency was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. And then was the king exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. And so Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in his God. And the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of the lions, them with their children and their wives, and the lions had the mastery of them, and brake all their bones in pieces, or ever they came at the bottom of the den. And then King Darius wrote unto all the people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, Peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree, that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever, in his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivereth and rescueth, he worketh signs and wonders in heaven and earth, who hath delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. And so this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. And so, like I said, we have here probably one of the most well-known stories in all the Bible. And so what I find very interesting about this is the consistency with Daniel's character. When you've been studying through the book of Daniel, honestly, it comes as no surprise when you get to chapter 6 and this has happened. It's really not a surprise that Daniel was steadfast. It's not a surprise that he was able to be brought through this particular ordeal. Because we've seen the fortitude of Daniel. We've seen the faith, the incredibly strong faith that Daniel has had. And as we have talked about from the very beginning, and the most important testimony of the book of Daniel to this point, we have seen the sovereignty of his God. And so, again, chapter 6, it's really not a shocking thing as we've gone through the book. Now, Daniel, again, he's one of these just fascinating characters of Scripture. He's been a faithful advisor of multiple kings and now multiple kingdoms. He served under Nebuchadnezzar. We know that he was serving under Belshazzar in Babylon. Now he's serving under Darius, and we'll see Cyrus in Persia. And so Daniel just remains faithful. He just keeps doing what he needs to do, and he does it obediently. He does it faithfully. And so as he had done for Nebuchadnezzar, he now does for Darius. And as has been the case, it says that Daniel was preferred above the presidents and the princes because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set over the whole realm. And so this is one of the things, there's many, but this is one of the things that I truly do love about studying Daniel, is, you can imagine if the story of Daniel happened in a modern context, you would have people crying out all the time, Daniel, you can't work for somebody like and call yourself a Christian. Daniel, you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do all these things and call yourself a Christian. Well, you know what Daniel did? Daniel just was steadfast to say, I will do what is asked of me. I will do it well, and I will do it up until the point where it breaks the law of my God, and then I will be firm in my convictions, I will be firm in my beliefs, and I will continue to do what is right. And so Daniel becomes a very, very good example to us to just put our heads down, do what is right, do it faithfully, do it obediently. And you think about it, Daniel didn't ask for any of this. Daniel didn't ask to be brought to Babylon. Daniel didn't ask to be thrust into the immersion program that we saw him way back in chapter 1. He didn't ask to be in the position that he's in. He didn't ask for the promotions he's had. He didn't ask for any of this. How did he get to the point he was in? He worked hard and he was faithful. And those two things led him to the position that he's in. Now, again, I always want to temper that. I always want to temper that to say, even if you are working hard, and even if you are faithful, and even if you are obedient, that does not guarantee that you will climb the ladder of success. That does not guarantee that you will be financially successful. That doesn't guarantee that every tragedy will turn to victory. That's not what that guarantees. What that does guarantee is that you are smack dab in the middle of the will of God, which is where you want to be no matter what your bank account is. And so Daniel, again, he becomes a very, very good example for us in this particular area. Now, really no surprise to us, same thing kind of with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those around Daniel did not like his success. They didn't like his success probably for a lot of reasons, probably not the least of which is the fact that here's some foreigner who has come in and has raised in rank above us, right? They don't like this. But for I'm sure a multiplicity of reasons here, they don't like Daniel. They don't like his position. And so they're trying to find some way to come against Daniel. And again, the testimony of Daniel just gets better and better and better as the chapter goes on. And so they're watching Daniel. They're studying him. They're trying to find something. And think about this. These men are bent on destroying him. Right? They want him dead. I mean, that's very obvious by the ploy they eventually come to. And so they're not, what could you say? They're not brokenhearted about bending laws. They're not brokenhearted about using nefarious means to bring down Daniel. And so my point is they're doing anything and everything they can to find some way to bring him down a peg. And yet, using all the means that they had, they find none. They find nothing. They find nothing that they can use to come against Daniel because Daniel was simply faithful in everything he did. And so they could find an occasion against him. They finally come to the realization that they had no choice, and the text says, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. There's a lot of great things written about a lot of great people in the Bible. I don't know that you will find a better testimony of anybody in Scripture than that simple little phrase right there, that men bent on his death and destruction can find not one single thing to do to him except it be against the law of his God. That's how firm and obedient Daniel was. That's how firm his convictions were. That's how faithful he was to follow the precepts of Scripture and to worship his God appropriately. And so to quote Blakelock here, he said, verse 5 is the most magnificent tribute a man can win. If a hostile, jealous, watching world can discover nothing against a man save his devotion to his God, that man is truly Christ-like. And so again, that's not to say Daniel's perfect. Nobody's making that claim. Daniel most certainly wouldn't make that claim. But that's to say that he lived well. He lived well. He lived in such a way that brought glory and honor to his God. And so knowing the fact that the only way we're going to do anything is if we try to get him to bend his convictions, if we try to get him to go against his beliefs. So they devise this particular plan. Now, one thing like most of you, I've probably heard the story of Daniel in the lion's den, dozens of times in my life as far as having it preached or taught through in some capacity. I can't remember anybody ever saying something about Darius in this particular chapter. And so Darius, towards this end at least, they appeal to his pride. And so, it's easy to talk about the men who are trying to come against Daniel. But here's what they knew. They knew two things. Number one, if we want to get Daniel, we have to go against his religious convictions. And number two, probably the best way to do that is to appeal to the religious pride of Darius. Now, they could have done this in other ways. But what they did is they come to Darius and say, hey, Darius, we think it would be a tremendous idea just for you. There's no benefit for us in this, right? Just for you to sign this petition that for 30 days nobody can pray to anybody or anything but you. Now, he shouldn't have signed this. The second came across his desk, I don't know if they use desk, but the second that came across his desk, Darius should have said, get this away. I'm not signing this. This is garbage. But what did he do? Well, you know what? That sounds pretty good. I like that idea. And so he gets so caught up thinking about the worship and the praise that he's going to receive for the next month. He gives no thought to Daniel. Does not give one thought. Now, we can see later on in the chapter, he cares greatly about Daniel. And we already see at the very beginning, he appreciated the work of Daniel. But he cares greatly about Daniel. But in this particular moment, his pride got to such a high level that he did not care about Daniel in this particular moment. All he cared about was himself. All he cared about was the month of worship he was about to receive. And so he signs it. And he signs this decree under Persian law that not even he himself can undo. This fits very well with the story of Esther. You study the story of Esther, and to make a very long story short, the Persian king under which she was living signs the decree that all the Jews were going to be killed. Well, when she eventually reveals to him kind of the behind-the-scenes things of what was going on, and he realizes that he's been duped, essentially, he tells her, I can't undo it. That was just how things were done. If the law, if the Persian king put this down as law, as a decree from the king, he himself can't undo it. He can't just sign another executive order, essentially, that says, never mind, scratch out the last one. No, it's in law. There's no changing it. And so he signs this thing into law where he himself is going to receive all this worship, all this praise. And it's essentially the pride of Darius. I understand it's the nefarious actions of these other men. But ultimately, Darius had the power to stop it. And it was the pride of Darius that led to Daniel being in the lion's den. And so I want you to see verse 10. I could spend all night here, but I won't. And so verse 10, now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he did aforetime. Such a magnificent verse. Such an example that Daniel sets for us. And so, just to run through this quickly, when Daniel knew the writing was signed, Daniel didn't do this out of ignorance. Daniel didn't go home and open those windows and pray without knowing the implications of what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew what the decree said. He knew what it would lead to if he were caught doing this. And you think of all the excuses that people might have made. Well, I'll still pray. I'll just shut the windows. Or I'll still pray, but I'll just do it in my head. I won't make any emotions. No, I won't bow to the east. Nobody will know what I'm doing. I'm still doing it. And so God understands my heart. Right? And so you can walk through the motions of all the things that people might have said, but Daniel didn't do any of that. No, he went in his house, and just like he had done every single day before this, he opened that window, he bowed to the east, and he prayed to God. And so, again, for Daniel, this new decree was nothing more than a new obstacle to overcome with old habits. That's all he needed to have. He needed to have established within himself this conviction to pray. And notice, he didn't start when the decree was signed. The conviction to pray started long before that decree was signed. That conviction to pray came long before Darius was probably ever on the throne. And so here was a man just simply going through the motions and doing what he did every single day. And so to him, it was insignificant what the decree said. I'm just going to do what I always do. And so if the question comes, well, how do I help myself get to the point where I'm always reaching out to God as the very first thing in times of trouble or crisis or whatever? then make going to God the very first thing you do in every situation. Whether it's trouble, whether it's paradise, always go to God first thing. Make that your habit. Make that the first thing you do every single day. And so when the trouble comes, when the crisis comes, you're already used to going to God. It's just second nature to you at that point. And so this is exactly how Daniel lived. And so he opened up that door, knowing the decree was signed. He bowed down. He prayed 3 times a day. And so Daniel had no disclaimers. He had no exceptions upon his convictions. He didn't say, I'm going to pray every day unless. I'm going to pray every day, until time comes when people are really trying to attack. No, I'm just going to pray. This was a conviction for Daniel. I'll quote Davis here. He said, Daniel's continuing practice of prayer does not seem to have been a difficult decision for him. We read of no inner turmoil or anguish. Indeed, his enemies didn't expect him to flinch at all about continuing his usual practice. But that's just it, isn't it? It was his usual practice, and sometimes that can grease the gears for a crisis. And so I want to key in just for a second. He said his enemies didn't expect him to flinch at all. Now, this is how strongly they knew that Daniel was convicted about his time of prayer. They were so convinced about Daniel's convictions that they knew, even if we get Darius to sign this crazy decree, we know Daniel's still going to go pray. That's how strongly they knew Daniel felt about his prayer life. And so even though literally the lion's den is on the line, they expected Daniel to go into his house, open his window, and pray. Again, the testimony of Daniel just gets better and better and better as the chapter goes on. It's an incredible, impeccable testimony for the man Daniel. And so, again, the king is in a bad spot because at this particular point, all they had to do was wait. They knew Daniel was going to pray. They knew he's going to open that window, he's going to bow, and he's going to do all that. All they had to do was wait. And so they see him do it. They go to Darius, and they tell him, and, they go through the whole spiel. Oh, didn't you sign this decree? Something's ringing in the back of my mind here. Didn't you sign this decree? And oh, by the way, don't forget that you can't undo that. They've backed Darius into a corner here, and there is nothing he can do. I mean, just per their law, he's in a bad spot. And it says, then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased with himself. And so again, catch that. He knows this was my doing. The king was sore displeased with himself and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. Of course, again, there's nothing he could do. Now, he could have tried to think of some alternate decree that maybe could have undone something. He could have signed a decree real quick. All the lions in Babylon got to be killed. It's not something, but he couldn't think of it. And so he labored all night. He just couldn't come up with anything. And so as I was going through this, I just thought about this verse in Proverbs, pride goeth before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Again, what did they appeal to? His pride. And that was the downfall here. Now, of course, we understand that God worked this together for good for Daniel. But obviously, it didn't have to go that way. God chose to make it go this way. It obviously could have had a very bloody end for Daniel. And if it had, it would have been the pride of Darius. Now, again, there's nothing that the king can do. So he has Daniel brought to the lion's den, and he tells him. He says, thy God whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. Now, I'll talk more about this in just a moment, but I don't think, at least from this chapter, I don't think we can take away and say Darius is a believer. I don't think we can do that. I'll talk about why here in a moment. But nevertheless, he says, thy God whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. Walvoord, he said, observable in this assurance of Darius is the deep impression that Daniel's personal piety and faithfulness to God had made upon the king, and that this impression had brought about Darius' own conviction that Daniel's God would come to his rescue in Daniel's extremity. And so again, he sees how faithful Daniel has been. Now, I don't know. Perhaps he knows. We don't know. We're not told. I don't know what all Darius knows about Daniel's past. I don't know if he knows how he refused the king's meat and yet was still better than everybody else. I don't know if he knows how, his 3 friends refused to bow down and pray to the idol, and yet God brought them through. I don't know what he knows, but what he sees in Daniel was enough to bring him to this conviction that your God's going to deliver you, because I see how you worship your God. I see how your God lives in you and in your life. He will deliver you. And so Daniel's put in the den. Stone covers the mouth. He seals the stone with his ring, which was essentially a sign that nothing can happen here. To me, I think maybe this was a protection more against himself than anything else. As soon as he put his signet upon that rock, not even he can come make somebody move that stone away, right? This is a protection to say nobody can touch this. And so at this particular point, there is no chance of escape. Deliverance would only come from God. And so God is putting his people now, and notice this, it's God using his own people. It's not as if God is doing this to unbelievers. God is putting his own people into positions where it's either God or nothing. I mean, there's no other option. They throw them into the fiery furnace, it's God or nothing. You throw Daniel into the lion's den, it's God or nothing. God is proving himself. Daniel, the proving has been done. He still prayed. There's no more proving that needs to be done for Daniel. That now the proving is upon God. And so interesting enough, Darius, again, he cares about Daniel. I don't think there's any question about that. The text says he goes home, he fasts all night, he can't sleep. He gets up early in the morning, he goes to the lion's den. He gets there, he cries out. As the stone moved away, he cries out, was God able to deliver you? And you can only imagine his relief, and he hears Daniel say, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and has shut the lions' mouths. They have not hurt me, for as much as before him innocency was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. I didn't do anything against you or anything else. God delivered me. It was him. He did it. And so, again, just like the three men in the furnace, an important message we have to get, God didn't remove the obstacle. He didn't devise a way in which Daniel never had to go into the den. He didn't devise a way in which the three never had to go into the furnace. He didn't remove the obstacle. He just brought them through it. And so, again, I think sometimes the stories of Daniel get mistaught. Just pray and God will take the lions away. And God will, no. That's not what happened. He was still in the lion's den. All night, Daniel had to sit there and stare at those lions. Now, exactly what happened? Did Daniel see the angel? I don't know. I don't know if the angel was there comforting Daniel. I don't know if he made it so that he couldn't see the... I don't know if those lions just sat down like kittens and let him pet them all night. I don't know what happened. But what I do know is that Daniel was in it all night long. Daniel was in that lion's den. And so God didn't remove the obstacle. He brought him through it. And so, again, we have to understand that the book of Daniel should not be taught in such a way to make us think, well, I'm untouchable. If I'm just faithful, nothing bad will ever happen to me. That's not the message of Daniel. That's not what he's trying to say. But in this particular case, God brings Daniel through the obstacle, and the text says, because he believed in his God. Now, again, as I mentioned back in chapter 3, sometimes God might remove the obstacle. Sometimes God brings us through the obstacle. Sometimes God allows the obstacle to do what the obstacle was intended to do. In fact, we were just talking with our kids about this today. God doesn't promise us comfortability. God doesn't promise us an easy life. Out of the 12 apostles, guess what? 11 of them died incredibly violent deaths. Assuming history is right on this, and we have no reason to believe it's not. 11 of them were martyred and killed brutally. Why? Not specifically because of their stand for Christ. Specifically because they were doing what God called them to do. And so it depends on what's God's will. It depends on what will bring God the most glory. Right? That's what he wants to do with your life. He wants to do with your life what will bring him the most glory. And sometimes what's going to bring him the most glory is to stop the mouths of the lions. Sometimes what's going to bring the God the most glory is to allow those lions to do what lions do. And so, again, it's not up to us. It's just up to us to serve him. It's just up to us to live faithfully. And so, again, I absolutely love the book of Daniel, not because of some false message that, everything you do is great and God loves you so much you'll never let anything bad happen to you. No, it's quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite. Live faithfully and serve God come what may. And so, as we close, Darius is thrilled about this. Obviously, there's no question about this. And interestingly enough, has Daniel's accusers and their families thrown into the lion's den. Now, this particular verse is widely debated. The language is a little bit difficult here, but there's no questioning what it actually means. It says, verse 24, the king commanded, and they brought those men which had accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions, them and their children and their wives. And here's what it says. And the lions had the mastery of them, and break all their bones in pieces wherever they came to the bottom of the den. And so it says literally, the lions tore them apart before they even hit the bottom. That's what it says. And so why did he do that? Well, number one, they were involved in all this, and so this was immediate judgment on their part. But also it shows what the lions would have done had God not stopped their mouths. Right? Again, all this is just proving the sovereignty of God. And so Darius, he then signs a new decree. And the new decree says that in every dominion of my kingdom, men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever. His kingdom, that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivereth and rescueth. He worketh signs and wonders in heaven and in earth, who had delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think from this chapter we can determine whether or not Darius was a believer, because whereas Darius does make several references to God, notice, if you read through it again, notice it's always Daniel's God. Daniel's God did this. Daniel's God is the one, not my God, Daniel's God. And so it definitely seems as though Darius was coming to believe in the God of Daniel from a pagan perspective. The pagan perspective which says, there's a lot of gods out there, this just happens to be one of the better ones. And so, again, Daniel's God, Daniel's God, Daniel's God, never my God. And so I hope I'm wrong. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong about that, and I hope one day we get to see Darius up in heaven. But nevertheless, from this particular chapter, I don't think we can make that determination. But what we do see, again, is a pagan king come to reckon with the sovereignty of God. And so with chapter 6, we're taking a different approach for the rest of the book, in that the first 6 chapters are all these kind of, not disjointed stories, but all these definite stories and moments and periods of Daniel's life. And then the rest of the book, the second half, the last 6 chapters, are very different in that they're kind of prophetic, and they're looking forward, and we're going to see some futuristic things. And so from just a literary perspective, what seems to be happening in the book of Daniel is that you got these first 6 chapters, which, again, week after week we've seen this. It's just hitting us over the head with the fact that God is sovereign. We've seen it. God humbles kings. He brings down kings. He sets up kings. He institutes kingdoms. He tears down kingdoms. He can quench the fire. He can stop the mouths of lions. He can do all this because he's sovereign. And so because we've seen all this, it should give us comfort and faith in the fact that if he can do all that, and not only that, I'll add, he can say the end from the beginning, because not only did he say that the Medes and Persians would be next, but in the last chapter we saw he tells Belshazzar, tonight's it. It's coming tonight. And guess what happened? It was that very night, right? And so God tells the end from the beginning. And so we've been able to see time and time again God's sovereignty proved, which should give us faith that what he says in the last 6 chapters is just as true as what happened in the first 6 chapters. And so we're going to see a little bit of things that will be or have already been fulfilled from our perspective, not from its writing, but from our perspective. But there's also a lot left in the last 6 chapters that are going to push us forward even to our time. And so again, we have had shown to us God is sovereign, God is sovereign, God is sovereign, and because God is sovereign, have faith that what he says is going to come to pass is going to come to pass. And so I'm excited to get into the second half of Daniel. Obviously, you love talking about these stories because they're so wonderful, so incredible. They teach us great biblical principles. But with that foundation, I'm also excited to get into the second half of Daniel because it is kind of a different thing altogether. But that's what we've got coming up.